The 2022 national elections was arguably the most divisive poll in recent Philippine history. People were out in the streets, and roads were flooded with colors signifying support towards a candidate. Social media was heavily utilized, and the issue of disinformation was highlighted. Political alliances were forged and broken. Dynasties prevailed and crumbled. This is INQUIRER.net's look back at the 2022 national elections. For the 2022 national elections, 12 seats to the Senate, over 300 seats to the House of Representatives, and thousands of provincial, city, and municipal posts were up for grabs. All eyes, however, are on the race for the top two national posts, the presidential and vice presidential seat.
The moment he steps out of the plane, he will die. That is my assurance to the people of the Philippines.
President Rodrigo Duterte, one of the most popular yet controversial presidents the country has had, was heading out of office.
Maraming dibomba sa amin dito. Loko-loko eh.
At one point, there was a push for a united opposition that would go against the administration slate or whoever President Duterte would endorse as his successor. The so-called opposition later broke down into separate teams. Who will be the face of the opposition? A rift among members of President Duterte's PDP Laban led to two factions forming within the political party, begging the question, who will be the administration's candidate?
That just proves to you how fragile, coalitions and political parties are in the Philippines. Yeah, it can easily be moved. Either it can easily crumble based on someone's popularity or based on an announcement that this someone or somebody is going to run, or based on the political context. For instance, has it changed or has there been a crisis as we've seen in the past?
All the while, questions on whether President Duterte's daughter, then Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte, would run for a national post continued to surface. And a possible return of the family of the late dictator, former President Ferdinand Marcos Sr. to Malacanang, was shaping up through his son, former Senator Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. By the end of the filing of Certificate of Candidacy for Presidency, all eyes were on 6 names. Former Senator Bongbong Marcos, then Vice President Leni Robredo, then Senator Panfilo Lacson, then Senator Manny Pacquiao, then Manila City Mayor Isko Moreno, and Labor leader Calyodi de Guzman. Most notably, Duterte's daughter Sara Duterte ran as Bongbong Marcos's vice president after initially announcing that she would run for re-election as Davao City Mayor.
Lalaban ako. Lalaban tayo. Inihahain ko ang aking sarili bilang kandidato sa pagkapangulo sa halalan ng 2022.
Then Vice President Leni Robredo, who was often sidelined during the Duterte administration, became the opposition leader. February 8, 2022 marked the start of the campaign period for the presidential and vice presidential polls, with each tandem holding their own proclamation rallies.
Ipagpatuloy natin ang ating nasimulan ngayon. Nang sa ganun, ang Pilipinas ay pararatingin natin hindi sa ating pinanggalingan, kung hindi ay papasikatin pa natin ang ating mahal na Pilipinas.
Nasa kapangyarihan po natin ang pagdala sa buong bayan natin
sa liwanag na inaasam natin.
Samahan ninyo ako sa May 9. Tuldukan na natin ang away ng pula at dilaw.
Aayusin ng gobyerno para maayos ang buhay ng bawat Pilipino. Yan ang aming pagsisikapan.
Samahan ninyo ako. Dahil ang laban ni Manny Pacquiao, hindi laban lang sa sarili ko, laban sa pamilya, kundi laban ng bawat Pilipino.
Over the next month leading to the May 9 elections, the presidential and vice presidential candidates roamed around different areas in the country. Supporters filled stadiums and streets. Camps publicized the number of attendees in their respective rallies. The battle, however, was not only happening on the ground. A separate campaign battle was happening on social media.
Seems like after 2016, we see the increasing progressive influence of social media. We saw that social media campaigning, I would say, became the major form of campaigning, or if not, it could rival traditional campaigning methods in the 2022 elections, because social media has the ability to engage and mobilize political support, but it also has the ability to amplify narratives. Given the very lax, unregulated ecosystem of social media in the Philippines, then it has become really a very vulnerable tool and a deliberately used tool to spread narratives that could result in votes. And we saw how fake news was extensively used.
The public also waited patiently for who President Duterte would endorse.
May kandidato tayo na nagko-cocaine yan. Yung mga anak ng mga mayaman.
But after taking jabs at some of the presidential candidates, President Duterte opted not to endorse any candidate.
Wala akong kandidato ni sino man sa pagka-presidente. I remain neutral.
Ang aking pangarap para sa ating bansa ay ipagkaisa muli ang sambayanang Pilipino.
From the time he announced he will run for a national post back in January 2020, Marcos has been hounded by controversy. Bongbong is the son of President Ferdinand Marcos Sr., whose two-decade rule was marred by human rights violations and corruption.
Anyone who knows the Marcoses know that Malacanang has always been their target, and the gradual phasing of the political career of now President Marcos is a testament to that.
Aside from this, several petitions were filed seeking to disqualify Bongbong Marcos from the presidential race. Most of the petitions stemmed from his 1995 conviction for his failure to file income tax returns. The disqualification cases and the bid to cancel the certificate of candidacy of Marcos were junked by the Commission on Elections and later on the Supreme Court. The unsettled estate tax of the Marcos family was also brought into discussion. Despite these issues faced by Marcos in his presidential campaign, surveys conducted by the social weather stations and Pulse Asia ahead of the elections indicated a Marcos victory. Right behind him was Robredo, who beat Marcos in the 2016 vice presidential elections. May 9, 2022. Millions of Filipinos across the country lined up at their respective precincts to cast their ballots. Long queues, faulty vote counting machines, and power outages hounded the early hours of the voting period. Despite the polling issues, the voting continued, making this year's elections the highest voter turnout in the country's history. And by 7 p.m., the voting ended. Little by little, the results started coming in. Early results showed Marcos leading over the rest of the candidates.
hindi pa tapos ang bilangan. Marami nang nagsasabi na tapos na, pero hindi pa talaga. Kaya antayin natin hanggang talagang maliwanag, mag 100% ng pagbilang.
As more results came in, the outcome was getting clear. The Marcoses are back in Malacanang.
Bilang isang boxer at atleta, marunong akong tumanggap ng pagkatalo. Sana lang, kahit talo ako sa laban na ito, panalo pa rin ang mga kapwa ko Pilipino, yung mga naghihirap.
Nais kong batiin si dating Senador Ferdinand Marcos sa kanyang pangunguna at patuloy na pangunguna.
Bangaman may hindi pa nabibilang, palinaw na ng palinaw ang tinig ng taong bayan. Sa ngalan ng Pilipinas na alam kong mahal na mahal rin ninyo, kailangan nating pakinggan ang tinig na ito dahil sa huli, iisa lang ang bayang pinagsasaluhan natin.
With over 31.6 million votes, Marcos won the presidential elections. His running mate, Duterte, also won with over 32.2 million votes. Marcos became the first presidential candidate in the Fifth Republic to win by a majority.
Not only were the Marcoses restored, they were given a huge electoral mandate, 58%, 59%, unprecedented in the history of post-EDSA. It really indicates that the Filipino public wanted to give them a second chance, and this chance, which I think President Marcos alluded to, is a gift from the Filipino people with high expectations. I would even say higher expectations. So it remains to be seen whether the restoration of the Marcoses will result in the satisfaction and contentment of the Filipino public, or will they break the hearts of Filipinos again for the second time?
In what is said to be the most divisive election in the country's recent history, the candidate that ran under the promise of uniting Filipinos won. Now, with several issues faced by the country, including inflation, natural disasters, and the pandemic, can the government stick true to its promise of unity?
What we have seen in the elections is that it's a type of political dynasties and political elites that really unified. Nation states are never ever wholly unified. What we have are consensus on certain principles and values, right? But to have one mind, to have one set of thinking, I don't think that's real unity. Unity is recognizing difference.